Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. With the CDL being as top heavy as it's arguably ever been, the big question has been raised: should the old OpTic team that is pretty similar to the OpTic Chicago roster, with FormaL returning to the lineup, happen to return this season, where would they stand in the CDL? The belief is certainly from FormaL, for the rest of the guys as well, they would be comfortably top 4 in this league as it stands. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, thought this was pretty funny. Fair play to the CDL as well, actually putting together here a top 5 players of COD challenges from the second open, and this is nice to see. I know people were commenting on the video itself being like, damn, I didn't even know this existed, which I'm not surprised, because they don't really talk about it much and it doesn't get much promotion. When it does get promotion, however, from the COD League official account, the way they describe the players I thought was kind of funny here, right? As Jake says, even the best players in challenges have their moments. Like, what do you mean, you know? Basically calling these guys bots, no? I thought the copy on this was kind of funny, but nonetheless, it was nice to at least see that promoted. Quick couple of things on top players in KD departments, right? Because this is the list of highest percentage of CDL events with a 1+1, 1.1 plus KD. Minimum 10 events. Now, if you exclude the 10 events thing, then it looks more like this. So you've got Scrappy is on here, Waskin is on here, you've got a couple of other players that haven't played, you know, have only played like 10 LAN events, something like that. But for those with a bit of a larger sample size, this is the list. So Cellium has had 76% of his events with a 1.1 plus KD. The most impressive here is probably got to be HyDra, right? Because he's the only player down to Simp and Pred who are doing this on an SMG, right? And you know, Simp's still having 48%, like half of his events with a 1.1 plus is very impressive. Like a 1.1 is extremely good in that particular role. HyDra's doing it basically every single time he turns up to an event. So then there's other things in play, right? The way the team is set up and all these other things. But I think HyDra definitely deserves his flowers. Octane is here, Skyz is here, Dashy is here, Wake and Methods are here actually as well. So that's pretty cool to see. Wake now no longer in the league as it stands, at least you know, what we heard earlier today. Wake's now in challenges. Minnesota are getting rid of him. They're making some changes. And Attach is not too far behind either. But as I say, speaking of Scrap and Simp, who are both on this list, they are effectively the MVP candidates this season. This is what the numbers look like so far this year for these respective players. They've both won an event. They've both been MVP of that respective event. It's not going to be determined today who's going to be the MVP of the year, but these two guys are, I would say, the front runners as it stands. If Toronto can turn their season around from what they showed in Miami, get back to the top, Scrappy can definitely win it. Right now, my favourite, though, would probably be Simp, because I think the FaZe are probably the stronger team. Toronto have had their problems in this new map set. Can they turn it around? Yes, absolutely. And if the season ended today, who would I give it to? That is very difficult to say. Possibly it would go to Simp, just based on some of the numbers we look at here, to be fair, because Simp is dropping, these by the way are percentiles, so if you're 98, 99, something like that, you are basically in the top 1-2% of players for that stat in the entire league. So both Simp and Scrappy, they're in different roles, of course. Like in terms of MVP SMG, MVP AR, no brainer. Both of these guys are leading those categories. But yeah, we can see that the KD and the kills per 10, damage per 10, engagements per 10 in terms of impact and stuff like this is right at the top for both of these guys. The only stats that aren't so great are the search and destroy for Scrappy. Hasn't actually been so good this year. Still above average, but not much above average, and he doesn't plant the bomb. Simp, however, is having generational search and destroy performances this season, and he's like their main bomb planter. That is pretty insane stuff. Like, you gotta look at it that way. However, control is in Scrappy's domain, really. Like, Scrappy has been unbelievable in that game mode so far, and yes, Simp's numbers are still really, really good, but Scrappy's are like so much better that he's basically right at the top of those standings. So I think you can go either way. For now, I would probably lean Simp, just because he's been undeniable from the start of the season to the present day, but that may change depending how things go. And this is where it comes down to which of these teams are beatable in the current state of the league. Going into the season, I would say that, you know, basically the top 16 players in the world were on the top 4 teams, of which there were 16 players. There were maybe Slasher, Attach, and maybe a couple of others that may have been top 15 players that weren't on those teams. But outside of that, there really aren't many at all that you can argue right now. So FaZe are also ranked number 1 in every single KD category as a team. So overall, their KD is the highest between them. That's true for Hardpoint, it's true for Search, and it's definitely true for Control, which of course KD matters a fair bit in that game, and if you guys didn't notice. But the top of the league right now, OpTic Texas, Atlanta FaZe, New York Subliners, Toronto Ultra. The rest of the league is somewhat suspect as it stands. And this is when the OpTic guys did, again, the content these guys come up with. Teams are obviously going to take notes of this stuff. We talked about it the other day, the 1v1 tournament they did, and this like kind of poker thing they've got going on here when Anti-Up, whatever they called it, Hitch is reading out some of the questions. They're talking about various entertaining things, but they were asked the question, how about putting this team of 4 together? Dashy, Shotzzy, Scump, and then of course FormaL. Very similar to OpTic teams of previous seasons, so there's a fair bit to say on this. How would they fare in the CDL today? Initially, Scump says, well, damn, you know, top 6 wouldn't be bad, given the fact that we haven't played the game together and FormaL has no idea what he's doing. But FormaL says, yeah, you know what? I've watched a fair bit of this game. I reckon that I could step in and do a good job if they were called on to do so. So the feeling is for these guys, they could step into the league and immediately be a top 4 team. Presumably if they came in for OpTic Texas, right? How would they fare against the rest of the league? Yeah, Shotzzy and the guys agree, top 4 bare minimum.
If we had to die and we had to choose a way to go out?
Yeah.
Or is it, because I'm choosing his answer, but if I have to die and I have to choose how I'm going out, it's got to be some crazy shit.
Like
swallowed by a fucking killer whale.
Whoa. No.
Swallowed by a whale, I live in his stomach for 3 days, eating his blood. Hoping to one day wash ashore.
No, wait.
It's got
Wait, hasn't that happened? I mean, deadass. Hasn't that happened? Like someone literally got like
You
swallowed.
Moby Dick?
What?
You from Moby Dick? You got swallowed by a whale and got spit back out?
Wait, really? No, I swear I read that. I'm not trolling. It's like someone got swallowed by a whale, and they
eating him from the inside.
Well, no, he wasn't.
Riding up his blubber, his oil.
Just fucking eating him. He's got a stomach ache. Meanwhile, I'm in there fucking.
I don't even know how. I don't know what I would do.
Now, if you, it's fucking cool. Now, if you 4 were currently a team in the CDL, what teams do you think you could beat right now?
In this current state.
Relax.
Wait. He said what, placing or
if you guys were grinding?
Teams? Yeah, you're actually going hard.
If you guys were grinding,
it says
we'd
right
run
now.
shit.
We're getting top 6.
Right now.
Right now?
Right now is the question.
I kind of know what's going on. You probably don't.
Yeah, I do.
Unranked?
Yeah.
Like, you know the sponsorship?
Yeah.
Oh, then.
Yeah, he's insane.
So right now, then?
Top 4.
Top 4.
Top 4. Anything else is a blessing. Anything else is bonus.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anything else is bonus points.
Top. What about you?
Top 4. Yeah. We'll take top 4.
Really?
Matt has the hills. Brandon got the Dammy.
Yeah.
Seth, I mean, he's doing what the fuck he wants.
So what do you guys think about this? Are they over-egging it? Is this actually a fair and reasonable assessment of the situation? Because we can certainly look at some of the comparisons to games past. This is the OpTic Chicago team. Very similar to the roster that they are presently talking about. Dashy, FormaL, Scump, and of course Envoy was there at the time. The year later, they made the change. FormaL retires, goes to Halo, of course. Shotzzy and Illy come into the roster, and the rest is history from now on. It's been a dramatic few years. But this was the 2021 season during Black Ops Cold War, and these were their results in the league at the time. So a similar team to what they would theoretically be forming today, but with Shotzzy here instead of Envoy. And I do prefer, to be fair, the Shotzzy Scump SMG partnership than I do the Envoy Scump SMG partnership. The question that I would still have is over the Dashy FormaL thing. At the time, Dashy played as the faster of the two, because FormaL was kind of the slow, more iron boots AR, and that's kind of the role that Dashy now inhabitates today, if that's even a word. Would be interesting to see, like, you know, FormaL and Kenny or something as a duo. That'd be interesting, because I think it was kind of evident that at the end of the season the Dashy FormaL thing just wasn't really working, and there were probably other reasons for that, like FormaL had fallen out of love for the game and all this. And that's another question, like if you are looking at this roster of 4 coming back with Shotzzy today, what do you include on the actual mentality in play? Because I don't know if FormaL would necessarily be so happy to grind this COD with these spawns and these maps again. If he was getting frustrated with the online COD stuff back in Cold War, no doubt he would be getting incredibly frustrated with the state of Modern Warfare 3 today, still with like more online action than we even had back then. To be fair, back then, because LAN events hadn't even started yet, like everything was online, but even once they started to, FormaL still was kind of out of love with the game. So whether you consider that factor or not, if you just want to look from a pure skill perspective, and also the point is that this is about how they would do now. It's not about, well, peak Scump, peak FormaL, and the rest of the guys at like peak performance, how would they do? It's like, how would he fare right now back in the league? Which I think says more about the competition in the league and the way that some of these other teams are formed than it necessarily does about those guys themselves. But this was the performance of the OpTic Chicago team back in 2021. They were okay, but they weren't especially good. They didn't make a single finals all year. They had a few fourth places. They were 6th of the World Championship at the end, 4th in the overall season, as we can see right about here. So a few years ago, that team, pretty similar to the team that would be formed today, but at the time, of course, they were grinding and they were putting the effort in, and Scump hadn't yet retired. Scump is still like easily good enough to play at a very high level. Like, I think there's no doubt in my mind about that one. The same I think is true for FormaL if he actually cared, but I don't know if he would care. Scump would care. Like, if Scump actually was to come back and he woke up one day and they'd subbed him in or something, like, he would grind and he would care, and I think he would put the effort in. FormaL, I don't really know. Like, I think this guy has other things that he wants to think about, but still, he reckons they could be top 4. And they were 4th back in the day. They finished the year on 360 points, just ahead of New York as it was at the time. Dallas had 400, Toronto had 450, and of course FaZe dominated the season with 4 event wins, 34 in 7 they ended the year. OpTic were 26 in 17, so they just didn't have that cutting edge OpTic at the time. This though is today's league, so far, 2024. And it's kind of a different world today, because I mean, just look at the comparison here. 2021 was, on the surface, not an especially competitive season. FaZe dominated the year, which is true. And today, it's a bit of a different story at the top of the league. But there was competition kind of all the way down. Surge were bad, but they were still not far off, you know, making it to the World Championship that year. To be fair, these bottom teams were pretty trash. But this top 8 ballpark was actually quite competitive, right? You had Dallas, Toronto, OpTic, you know, New York were good, Minnesota were competitive, they'd won a lot of Game 5s, Los Angeles Thieves, of course, were an absolute mess, but nonetheless, they were still winning some series, and then Florida were actually mixing things up that year regardless. So the top 8, that year, it was top 8 and bottom 4, pretty much, whereas this year, it's top 4 and bottom 8. It's pretty much reversed, because it's actually remarkable, isn't it, how similar the records are of all of these teams. From 5 through 12, like, even though Boston are last and 50 points, they're not that far behind Rocker, and Rocker have 7 series wins and Boston have 5. Like, that's the difference between 5th and 12th. It's crazy. Whereas the top 4, again, it's looking like FaZe are going to win a lot of series this year and have a very good series record compared to even 2021. But the top guys are closer. So I think the point is, especially in the current league, does it take much to become a top 4 team? All you've got to do is be better than Rocker, be better than Vegas, and that is a different story, I'd say, than being better than Subliners back in the day, or being better than, you know, even Thieves back in the day. In 2021, because, you know, the Subliners team that was 5th place back in Cold War, they had HyDra on their team. You know, they had a pretty damn good roster. They had Clay was there, like Asim was there early on. They made a few changes, Diamond Con. They threw around a few things, but, you know, they had some serious upside that year. Whereas nowadays, it's probably not the case. So I'm kind of being inclined to believe what those guys are saying. If they actually committed, they put in the time, and they were under OpTic Texas, okay, I don't think they'd be the 3rd best team as they currently are in the standings, and they were, of course, 2nd at the most recent major, so they're the 2nd best team in the world as it stands, but I still feel like they could be easily good enough to be top 4. Not necessarily because they'd be that good as a team. I'd have my questions if that team was to actually form again, but just because the competition further down than that is somewhat weaker than it has been for some time, just because the talent is so consolidated and stacked right at the top of the league. Do you get the same formula as well that you got back in the day? Thought this was kind of interesting that was floating around as well here from Crone when he was discussing ranking some Infinite Warfare on certain players. There was talk about Gunless and all this, and you know, whether he should get a spot back in the league, which it doesn't necessarily seem like he might do. There was talk from Donnie Temp as well saying that, you know, these guys were faded voting on this. This just, for example, here, the Infinite Warfare rankings, this is FormaL at number 1, kind of unanimously, and Temp was saying in the replies that Slasher was voted all the way down here, despite the fact that he was a top 3 player in the game for the last few events of the season, which he found somewhat surprising. And interesting to see even Dashy make it onto this list here from the competitive COD Reddit rankings, despite the fact that he plays, what, 1 or 2 events, something like that. I guess I'll share the others just out of interest here. These were the relative rankings for the players back in World War II and Black Ops 4. So this is what was the case in World War II. That year it was pretty unanimous that it was either Kenny or Gunless, and it was really close between the 2 of them that season. And then the Black Ops 4 rankings went as follows, with Dashy, Simp, Octane, aBeZy, and then Dylan Cos was 5th place race that year, man, that was, that was quite the time. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
I've slept with one man in my life. His name is Maven. This is a true story. I slept with Maven. I slept with Clint Maven Evans. I slept with him in a bed. That is true. I have slept with a man before, yes.